The American Civil War, which lasted from 1860 to 1865, brought upon many difficulties that would challenge the reunification of the northern and southern states. The years following the war came to be known as the Reconstruction period, which sought to reunite the states and its people and rightful equality among them both. The more demanding post-war issues that had to be addressed during the Reconstruction period included the undetermined position of many former slaves and poor whites in the new anti-slavery country, the uneasy tension between former Confederate and Union states, and how to successfully rebuild a stable country in all political, social, and economic aspects. Social events of Reconstruction included race groups like the Ku Klux Klan and discriminatory laws like the Jim Crow laws. The extremity of racism in society arose as many whites disagreed on the rights they were given to former slaves. Economic matters during the period saw creation of sharecropping, a system created in hopes of rebuilding the economic position of former slaves and poor whites. Some of the political issues during Reconstruction saw added amendments to the Constitution in cases such as Plessy v. Ferguson, in which the government fought to give blacks their rights against the majority of the public's liking. Many problems certainly came about through Reconstruction, but it was only a start to the remaking of the United States. Although there is evidence to support that the government had done a considerable amount between 1860 through 1900 in an attempt to reunite the United States and create an equal status between the people and the states, social, political, and economic equality among certain people was not fully obtained during that period.
While economic equality was a major goal for freed slaves during the Reconstruction era, it was not attainable. The average monthly wage for an African American was $10 to $16. The 40 acres and a mule policy created by Union General Sherman promised free slaves that they would receive 40 acres and a mule. However, President Andrew Johnson ordered all land to be returned to its previous owners. The Freedmen's Bureau were forced to inform the freed slaves that they could either sign labor contracts with planters, also known as sharecropping, or be evicted from the land they occupied. Sharecropping was a system in which white landowners would rent out their land to a black family in exchange for blacks to work on the crops. This was not considered economic equality because the blacks did not own the land they worked on, and most of the crops harvested went back to the landowner. This system was very similar to indentured servitude, which was ruled out by the Civil War. Even after 25 years of being freed from slavery, blacks only received roughly $27.58 worth of land. The Reconstruction era did not bring forth economic equality.
After the Civil War, there were many social changes in the United States of America. Racism was one of the biggest problems in the time of the Reconstruction era. A huge outcome of this racism is the Ku Klux Klan, but there are also people helping the black people. People came from the North to help former black slaves. They helped to set up the first black educations like colleges, schools, and recruit teachers. They also wanted to help the blacks to vote, and they wanted them to understand their rights. But the bill got vetoed 7 times by the President Andrew Johnson. People came from the North to the South for work. They worked for the government in the South. Because they were working for the Reconstruction that helped for the black people, they were in danger to be killed by the Ku Klux Klan. The Ku Klux Klan was originally formed to stop people from voting for the Republicans, which were for the black people. They set up successful local chapters in the state, The reason why they wanted to stop the people from voting for the Republicans was because the Grand Wizard of the KKK said that the black people were voting for the Republicans. Although systems didn't really work, they continued with using brutal violence against black people in public. The main idea of the Ku Klux Klan was, or is, to control the dramatically changed social situation after the Civil War by using violent means to restore white supremacy. There was also a lot of violence against the black people outside of the Ku Klux Klan. A lot of white Southerners didn't like the black people and they were racist. They made life very hard for the freed men. They used a lot of violence against the black people. They were attacked by big groups of white people with clubs and stones. The colored people also were knocked down. Some of them were injured and they stole their things. So the Ku Klux Klan weren't the only ones that were against the blacks. The Jim Crow laws made life for black people hard too. The goal of these laws was to separate all black and white people. They created a system that made them equal but separate. They also didn't want the black people to vote, so they had to pass a literacy test if they wanted to vote. In the separation between the black people and the white people, they had separate but equal train cars. The black people rebelled against this law, and they wanted to get the Separate Car Act repealed, but they couldn't change the law, and it was getting more separated after this. From drinking fountains to train cars, everything was separated. Also, it was forbidden for black people to marry a white person. The freed men, the Negroes or mulattoes, could get legally married, so also the races would be kept separate. Congress's Reconstruction Plan drastically changed Southern politics. Southern politics beforehand put limitations upon all blacks and mainly benefited the white community. The Reconstruction era opened the doorways for former black slaves to have equal rights as the rights. As the majority of Congress consisted of Republicans at that time, because their efforts into improving the lives of slaves were favored by many Northerners and former slaves. Of course, a great amount of animosity existed on account of that matter, though. The Southern government had no choice to comply with congressional laws created to help the black Americans, but they regularly put forward different regulated codes and rules that they hoped would diminish the growing black political power. Former black slaves began to have more opportunities than some poor white farmers. This angered many white Southerners since they believed that those were jobs that could have belonged to themselves. In order to try and regain some political power over the blacks that they had just before the Reconstruction, the black codes were created, which deeply angered many radical Republicans. In retaliation, Republicans ordered the Southern states to swear their loyalty to the U.S. and also sought to recreate laws that would further improve the political position of freed men. They are known as the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery in the United States. The 14th Amendment provided equal protection under the law, enforcing that every person had the way of protecting the rights that were naturally given to them. This amendment in particular gave blacks an opportunity to potentially prevent the harsh acts of discrimination put against them by Southerners in the future. Southern states refused to ratify the 14th Amendment, though. The Southern states who refused were split into 5 different military districts. In order to be readmitted to the Union, the states had to ratify the amendment and also recreate their own state constitution that would comply with the 15th Amendment. The 15th Amendment gave men of any color the right to vote. However, it did not stop the tax and nearly impossible literary test requirement that had to be done in order to even vote. It was very hard for many blacks to vote since they could barely read and in most times couldn't afford to pay the taxes due to their economic situation. However, more African Americans were elected to office between the years of 1865 to 1880 than at any other time before. The Reconstruction Acts ordered past Southern officials to give up their positions. These officials were replaced with carpetbaggers and scalawags. These Northern Republicans came to the South during Reconstruction in hopes to rebuild the South, gain profit, help the former slaves, or to gain a possible elective position. Unfortunately, the newcomers had taken away any major political leadership positions from the blacks. All in all, the Reconstruction era somewhat created political equality among blacks and whites, but economic and social equality was not at all improved.